This is part of a series of videos around solution evaluation in a process improvement project environment. We're focusing on domain-based problem solving, and this specific video is about a risk analysis using a tool called Quick FEMA, FMEA. And the learning objectives for this video include reviewing the improve phase activities that led to this risk analysis. We'll then take a look at introducing the tool called Quick FEMA, a modified risk scoring matrix. We'll then define the three elements or attributes of risk that are evaluated in the Quick FEMA spreadsheet. And at the end, I'll provide some facilitation tips or advice on how to use Quick FEMA in a way that increases user acceptance, especially of naysayers within the organization. All right, I've cleaned up my screen just a little bit, and I'm pulling information from the Business Process Improvement Workbook. And when I get to the point where I'm ready to take a look at risk analysis, I often want to answer this question for the team, how do we get here? I just want to give them a reminder of all of the great work that they've done to come up with this list of solutions. We've been working on a domain-based project, and in define and measure, we captured current state information. In the analyze phase, we used a variety of tools to get to root causes. Each of those root causes in the improve phase, we used a broad to narrow approach where for each of the root causes, we came up with a variety of tools for solutions. And so we've got a large list of solutions. On the back end of the improve phase, we use tools to narrow that solution list down. Things like our IFAT scoring matrix, our idea floats, and now we're ready to place these solutions into an implementation plan. What we've been doing is we've been doing this broad to narrow Keener model approach where we come up with a broad list, then we work on narrowing it down to the smaller list. So I've got these 4 solutions. I'm about to place them in my implementation plan, but I'll take each of the solutions and I'll perform a risk exercise in which we try to identify all of the risks. And then as a team, we come up with preventatives. For each risk that is identified, we will try to come up, in some cases, with countermeasures to either reduce or eliminate the risk. In some cases, we will accept the risk and build it into part of the implementation plan. But our job in this de-risking exercise is first to identify all the risks, give them a score, and then work on how we should deal with the risks, whether we prevent them, reduce or eliminate them, or whether we manage and mitigate them. The tool that I'll use is a tool called Quick FEMA. It comes from the body of knowledge around the problem-solving methodology called FEMA, Failure Modes Effects Analysis. And we're not going to do a full-blown FEMA analysis. In many ways, FEMA is like DMAIC in that it is a data-driven problem-solving methodology that takes you from current state observations to root causes to future state solutions, but with much more of an emphasis on what were the risks that were triggered to create the problems. So instead of doing a full-blown FEMA, we will just pull a tool from the FEMA toolkit. It's a spreadsheet called Quick FEMA. Let's take a look at it now. All right, I'm pulling up the Quick FEMA spreadsheet. It comes from the Business Process Improvement Workbook, but also on the course materials website. The Excel version of this spreadsheet is available for you to download, use, and modify. And each worksheet tab within the workbook, I specify one of the solutions. So earlier in this video, we talked about 4 solutions that had made it through our vetting. I'll put each one of the solutions into a separate worksheet tab. And then for this solution, I'll bring the team into the room and I will ask them, what are the known risks associated with this solution if we were to implement it? List off all of the known risks that if triggered would have either a negative or positive effect on any of the stakeholders that are affected by this process. And I have the team list off those risks. I know that usually the team does a poor job of this risk identification. And here's the reason why. It's not that the team doesn't want to have risks identified. It's that the team has worked really hard at coming up with these solutions. In many ways, these are their beautiful babies that they want to introduce to the world to help make the process better. They've worked a really long time at developing these solutions to attack root cause. And to bring a team in the room and say, hey, I'd like you to identify all of the risks. I'd like you to identify all of the issues related to this process. It's in many ways like saying, tell me what's ugly about your baby. It's very hard for team members because of their attachment to the solution to identify all of the known risks. So here's what I do. I have the team come up with the risks that they're able to identify, and then when they're done, I will let them know that I'm going to bring in some other subject matter experts to help us with this risk analysis. And I'm not trying to sabotage them. I tell them, great job. But this is a specific person that I'm looking for. And that person I call the process improvement curmudgeon. This is an individual who has maybe at one point in time been an evangelist for process improvement, was maybe a process improvement specialist at one time, but they got burned. Something bad happened, and now they become a naysayer within the organization as it relates to process improvement and improving this specific system. During the entire journey through define, measure, analyze, and improve, I've been trying to identify this person or group of people. And when it comes to the risk analysis section, I will go out to that individual and I'll say, look, I've got a team. They're coming up with some solutions right now. I think the solutions are interesting, but I'm not sure that they've identified all of the risks. The risk set that they came up with, I think, is incomplete. Would you be interested in coming into our group meeting and identifying all of the additional risks that they've missed? Would you be interested in basically lighting this solution on fire and pointing out all of the flaws? And I'll tell you one thing about these process improvement curmudgeons. They may not actually want to be too involved with the project work, but when it comes to an opportunity to shoot down these new and different ideas, they love the opportunity and they'll come into the room. Now, I don't sabotage my team by bringing them in unannounced. I let the team know I'm bringing in this curmudgeon. They're going to help us identify more risks. But we're also going to use the curmudgeon to help us come up with preventatives and make the solution stronger. And here's how I do it. The curmudgeon comes into the room, sees the easily identifiable known risks that the team came up with, and they almost always will identify many, many more. But then I don't stop there and let them leave the room with everybody in the room with all of these new risks and old risks identified. We go through and score the risks on 3 attributes: severity or impact, probability of occurrence, and undetectability. And I don't use numeric scores. I just use high, medium, and low. We'll work through operationally defining what is a high, a medium, and a low for each one of these attribute areas. But with the curmudgeon and the team in the room, we first take a look at severity. For me, the definition of severity is if this risk were triggered, what is the impact to stakeholders affected? Do we lose the paper form that's being processed in the system? Do we lose the $1,000 check that's attached to the paper form? Or do we lose the finger of the person who's holding on to that paper form and $1,000 check? High, medium, and low for severity or impact if the risk is triggered. This is the portion of a risk that most people think of when they do risk analysis, is the severity. But risks also have other attributes. I want the team to also take a look at probability. If this risk were triggered, how likely is it that it could be triggered? Is it, 1 in 10? Is it 1 in 1,000? Is it one in never been triggered in the history of our organization or the history of our industry? High, medium, and low for probability of occurrence. So we first take a look at severity, then we take a look at probability, and we place, let me clean up my screen a little bit here. We place letter attributes high, medium, and low. The third attribute is undetectability. For undetectability, I want to know how far in advance will we as an organization know when this risk is triggered? How detectable is it? Is it a case where when the risk is triggered, we have days or weeks to plan and mitigate for it? Or is it a risk that we won't know that it's triggered until it's come up and bit us on the backside? What's the level of undetectability? The more undetectable the risk is, the greater I'm concerned about the risk. For an example of undetectability, I'm going to use two types of weather-related activities. One is scores very high on the undetectability scale, and the other is less so. But they are both events that, when triggered, create billions of dollars of lost property each year. Hundreds, probably thousands of lives are lost each year. They're both very risky events, but in terms of undetectability, one is greater than the other. And I'm talking about hurricanes versus earthquakes. Earthquakes would score extremely high in the undetectability. So we'll score each of the risks on undetectability. We do this across for each risk, and then when we're done with the curmudgeon in the room, we also then take a look at our results. And for any risk that is scored as a high for any of the attributes, whether it's in all of the attribute fields or just in one, anytime I see a high marking, the team with the curmudgeon needs to work on creating a preventative for that risk. And either a preventative that eliminates the risk altogether or a preventative that turns that high into a medium or a low. Anytime I see a high, I know I've just got too risky a solution right now, and I need to work on building preventatives. If the team can't come up with a solution or a countermeasure that turns this high into a medium or a low, if we can't get rid of it, I'm getting rid of the whole solution. This whole solution is removed from the list of solutions that we're going to include in the solution implementation plan. Now, here's the great thing. If they are able as a team to replace that high with a medium or a low, or replace the risk altogether, we've now made this solution much stronger. This is a much better solution. And a person who's helped build this solution, the curmudgeon. We've helped to change the mind of somebody that may be opposed to the solution because their voice was included in the build out. I really love a quick FMEA analysis. I don't do it on every solution. I only do it on the solutions that have made it through all of the other evaluation. So I'm not going to run this on all 25 or 30 solutions at the end of the broad part of the improve phase. I'm only going to do it once we've got down to our vital few solutions. And the ones that make it through, those are the ones that I'm going to put in my solution implementation plan. It's really the last evaluation tool that we use.